The November wind cut through Marcus Webb's worn jacket like 1,000 tiny knives. He sat on the cold concrete steps behind Miller's bakery, the same spot he'd claimed for the past 3 months. In his weathered hands, he held half a loaf of bread, 2 days old, maybe 3, that the baker's assistant had left in the dumpster that morning. Marcus broke off a piece and chewed slowly, savoring what little flavor remained. At 52, he never imagined his life would lead here. 10 years ago, he'd been a construction foreman with a modest home in the suburbs, a pickup truck, and enough savings to feel secure. Then came the accident on the job site, the back injury that wouldn't heal, the medical bills that piled up faster than he could pay them, and eventually the foreclosure notice that sealed his fate. The afternoon sun struggled to warm the alley as Marcus watched the world go by from his hidden corner. He could hear the sounds of the town preparing for the evening, cars honking, people laughing, the distant chime of the church bell marking 4 o'clock. It was a Wednesday, he reminded himself. Not that days mattered much anymore. "Mama, can we go in now?" "I'm getting cold!" Marcus looked up to see a woman and a small boy walking past the alley entrance. The boy couldn't have been more than 7, with sandy blonde hair and bright blue eyes that seemed too large for his thin face. He wore a red jacket with a cartoon character Marcus didn't recognize, and he bounced on his toes with the impatient energy only children possess. "Just a minute, sweetie," the woman replied, her voice strained. She was fumbling with her purse, searching for something. "I can't find my wallet." "I know I had it at the grocery store." The boy noticed Marcus then. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Marcus saw something shift in the child's expression, not fear or disgust, as he'd grown accustomed to, but curiosity. Marcus quickly looked away, breaking off another piece of bread. "Mama, there's a man over there," the boy said softly. "Tommy, don't stare. Come on, let's go back to the car. Maybe I left it there." Their footsteps faded, and Marcus was alone again. He finished his bread in silence, brushed the crumbs from his lap, and pulled his jacket tighter. In a few hours, he'd need to head to the shelter on Maple Street. They served dinner at 6, and if you arrived late, there was nothing left. The next day brought rain, a cold, persistent drizzle that soaked through everything. Marcus huddled under the awning of a closed hardware store, watching puddles form in the cracked sidewalk. His stomach growled. He'd missed dinner at the shelter the night before. All the beds had been full by the time he arrived, and they'd turned him away. "There he is, Mama!" Marcus recognized the voice before he saw them. The same woman and boy from yesterday, this time with an umbrella and purpose in their stride. The woman, Sarah, he'd learn later, looked hesitant, but the boy, Tommy, pulled her forward. "Are you okay, mister?" Tommy asked, his small face scrunched with concern. "I'm fine, son. You folks should get out of this rain." Sarah opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. Marcus could see the conflict in her eyes, the desire to help warring with caution, with the uncertainty of approaching a stranger. He'd seen that look before. "We were just..." she started, then stopped. "Tommy insisted we find you." He was worried. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, some protective wall he'd built. "That's kind of you both, but really I'm okay." "You're all wet," Tommy observed with the blunt honesty of children. "And you look hungry." "Today's my birthday, and Mama said I could pick where we eat dinner. Will you come with us, please?" Marcus stared at the boy, stunned. "Son, I can't do that." "Why not?" Tommy's eyes were so earnest, so pure. "Don't you like pizza? We're going to Angelo's. They have really good pizza." Sarah knelt down beside her son, one hand on his shoulder. "Tommy, honey, maybe the gentleman has other plans." "I don't think he does, Mama." Tommy looked up at Marcus. "Do you?" The question hung in the rain-soaked air. Marcus felt his throat tighten. When was the last time someone had invited him anywhere? When was the last time he'd sat at a table in a restaurant, surrounded by warmth and light and the simple dignity of being treated like a human being? "You don't have to," Sarah said softly, and Marcus could hear in her voice that she meant it. She wasn't pitying him. She was offering a choice. I'd be honored," Marcus heard himself say. Angelo's Pizza Palace was a family-run establishment that had served the town for 3 generations. red checkered tablecloths, the smell of oregano and melting cheese, photographs of Italy covering the walls. It was the kind of place that made everyone feel at home. Marcus hesitated at the door, suddenly aware of his appearance. His clothes were damp and dirty, his beard unkempt, his shoes held together with duct tape. The other diners would stare. They'd complain. The owner would ask them to leave. But Tommy grabbed his hand, actually grabbed it, and pulled him inside with birthday boy enthusiasm. "Come on. I want to sit in the booth by the window." The hostess, a teenager with purple streaks in her hair, looked uncertain. Sarah stepped forward. "Table for 3, please. It's my son's birthday." Something in Sarah's tone, firm but kind, seemed to settle the matter. They were led to the booth, and Marcus found himself sliding into a seat across from Tommy, who was already chattering about toppings. "I like pepperoni and mushrooms, but Mama says we have to get half plain because she doesn't like mushrooms." "What do you like, Mr. Webb, Marcus Webb?" He cleared his throat. "And I like just about anything, to be honest." A waitress appeared, and Sarah ordered a large pizza, half pepperoni and mushroom, half supreme along with breadsticks and 3 sodas. When she tried to ask Marcus what he wanted to drink, he found he couldn't speak. It had been so long since someone had asked his preference for anything. "Sweet tea, okay?" Sarah asked gently. Marcus nodded. As they waited for the food, Tommy talked. He talked about school, about his teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who was really nice but gave too much homework, about his best friend Lucas, who had moved away last summer, about the dog he hoped to get someday. Sarah interjected occasionally with gentle corrections or clarifications, but mostly she let her son fill the silence. Marcus listened, and as he listened, he felt something awakening inside him, something he'd thought had died on those cold streets. He felt seen. He felt human. "What about you, Mr. Webb?" Tommy asked suddenly. "Do you have a family?" "Tommy!" Sarah's voice held a note of warning. "It's all right," Marcus said. He took a breath. "I had a daughter. Her name was Claire. She'd be about 25 now." "Where is she?" Tommy asked. "Tommy, that's enough questions." "No, really, it's okay." Marcus smiled sadly. We lost touch after her mother and I divorced. That was a long time ago, before everything fell apart. I don't know where she is now." The pizza arrived then, steaming and perfect, and Tommy's attention shifted to the immediate joy of food. But Sarah looked at Marcus, with understanding in her eyes, the understanding of someone who'd known loss too. As they ate, Marcus learned that Sarah was a nurse at the county hospital, working double shifts to make ends meet since her husband had died 2 years ago. Tommy had been only 5 then, barely old enough to understand that Daddy wasn't coming home. "We manage," Sarah said, watching her son devour his 3rd slice. "Some days are harder than others, but we have each other. That's what matters." Marcus thought about what managing meant for her, the exhaustion in her eyes, the worn edges of her purse, the way she carefully counted bills when the check came. She was closer to his old life than she probably realized, dancing on that same edge he'd fallen over. When Tommy insisted on birthday cake, a small chocolate cake, the restaurant provided with a single candle, Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. As they sang "Happy Birthday," the other diners joining in, he was transported back to better times, to celebrations with Claire, to the simple magic of making a child smile. Tommy blew out his candle and looked at Marcus. "I made a wish, but I can't tell you what it is or it won't come true." "That's the rule," Marcus agreed, his voice rough. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pressed something into Marcus's hand. "The shelter on Maple Street," she said quietly. "Ask for Director Patterson. Tell him Sarah Chen sent you. He's a good man. He'll help." Marcus looked down at the card she'd given him, the shelter's information, along with her own phone number written on the back. "I can't promise anything magical," Sarah continued, "but there are programs, resources, if you want them." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah glanced at Tommy, who was trying to convince the waitress to let him take home the Happy Birthday banner, because someone did it for us once when we needed it most, and because Tommy sees things more clearly than most adults. He saw someone who needed a friend. That night, Marcus didn't return to his usual spot behind the bakery. Instead, he walked to the shelter on Maple Street. Sarah's card clutched in his hand. Director Patterson, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes, was indeed expecting him. Sarah called ahead, Patterson explained, leading Marcus to a clean bed in a quiet room. She's good people. Told me you might be ready for a change. Over the following weeks, Marcus began the slow climb back. Patterson connected him with a caseworker who helped him navigate the maze of social services. There was a doctor who treated his back pain, a job counselor who found him part-time work at a warehouse, a lawyer who helped him track down Claire. Sarah and Tommy visited him at the shelter every Sunday. Tommy would bring drawings from school, chatter about his week, and always ask if Marcus had eaten enough. Sarah would bring practical things, new socks, a warm coat, information about apartment shares and job openings. "You don't have to do this," Marcus told her one Sunday. "I know," she replied. But Tommy made a wish on his birthday candle. "I think it was about you." 6 months later, Marcus stood in a small apartment, his apartment with second-hand furniture and clean sheets and a refrigerator that actually had food in it. His back still hurt on cold days, and the warehouse job was physically demanding, but he was working. He was living, not just surviving. There was a knock at the door. When he opened it, Tommy burst in with his characteristic enthusiasm, followed by Sarah carrying a box. "We brought you a housewarming present," Tommy announced. Inside the box was a framed photograph, the three of them at Angelo's Pizza Palace on that rainy November evening 6 months ago. Marcus hadn't even realized someone had taken it. "The owner snapped it," Sarah explained. "He sent it to me last week. Thought you might want it." Marcus stared at the photo. In it, he could see the transformation already beginning. The man who'd been eating stale bread in an alley, finding his way back to hope, guided by a 7-year-old boy who'd seen him not as a problem or a statistic, but as someone worth knowing. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. But the words felt inadequate for everything they'd given him. Tommy hugged his waist. "You're welcome. Now can we order pizza? I'm starving." As Sarah laughed and pulled out her phone to call Angelo's, Marcus looked around his small apartment, his home, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Gratitude, not just for the roof over his head or the food or the job, but for the reminder that kindness still existed in the world. Sometimes it came in grand gestures, and sometimes it came in the whisper of a child on his birthday, willing to share his cake with a stranger. Either way, it was enough to change everything.